Alright, well, it's time for episode 38. With you, as always, is me, Chucky, and we've got Jigsaw.
As always, it's nice to be here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We've got 5 more movies to discuss. And for today's show, we've got the sequel to the 1980 slasher Prom Night. We've got Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night 2 from 1987. Then we'll discuss a low-budget, more modern horror movie called Blood Widow from 2014. Then we move over to an Australian horror movie made in the past few years called Scare Campaign from 2016. And then we will touch on Ms. 45, 1981, which is an Abel Ferrara movie. And then we'll finish things off with the creme de la creme of well, we're going to talk about I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu. We from 2019. We don't need to say much else about that.
So we're starting off tonight with what may be one of the better movies of the night, Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night 2 from 87. So it's a sequel to the Prom Night movie from 1980, though there's no relation, which arguably works in the movie's benefit. Basically, 30 years after the death of the prom queen in 57, the spirit of the prom queen returns and sort of possesses this Goody Two-Shoes student, and then she becomes not so Goody Two-Shoes and things start happening and some spooky stuff. Prom Night 2 is a movie I've seen maybe 3 or 4 times now. I've always enjoyed it, and I've always enjoyed it more than the original Prom Night. I don't hate the original Prom Night by any means, and I gave it like an almost average rating last time I saw it. But Prom Night 2 really feels like a quality 80s horror movie, even though it doesn't get everything right. I think it has a lot of quality performances, very interesting ideas, very, not necessarily spooky, but pretty decent special effects, almost like a Nightmare on Elm Street-esque type stuff going on. So I definitely think it's a interesting sequel, and the direction they went in was maybe a bit unique, but I think it worked out. And this one is one I suspect we may have mild disagreements on. So what did you think about this one, Chucky?
Yeah, well, as people will know if they've listened to our Prom Night review, I like the original Prom Night quite a bit, and you tend to feel it's kind of only average. So I guess with you enjoying this one more than the first one, it goes without saying that I enjoy the first one more than I enjoy this one, just because it's so different. It's, I mean, the first one's a slasher movie. This one essentially turns a slasher into more of a supernatural movie. It's not really connected in any way. So, look, I mean, the movie's not bad. I mean, it's still alright. It's just, I think with this movie, there's just nothing real in it that is kind of memorable to me. It, I mean, it does have that 80s charm to it, and I mean that most movies from the 80s have that 80s charm, so I can't really say that makes it stand out for me. But yeah, like the original movie, there's multiple scenes in that even years later after watching the film that I remember, especially, you know, the ending. Whereas this one, I watched this twice actually in the last 2-3 weeks, and I already forget pretty much everything in it. Sadly to say, I do. So my notes on this one, if I didn't have notes written down, I'd barely have anything to talk about. I just can't remember much of the movie.
You're not a Michael Ironside guy?
I actually don't mind Michael Ironside. I've seen him in plenty of things. I think he's a decent actor. I mean, he's not even the main character in the movie, so, you know, he pops up every now and then in certain scenes. We know a part of what's going on in the movie has to do with him, but yeah, I mean, it's not really the type of movie you watch for Michael Ironside. I guess the main thing I enjoyed about the movie was the shower scene with the running in the towel. That was very nice.
I was wondering if that scene would stand out to you. and it probably stood out in many ways.
I will say, that is one thing I remember, but to be fair to all other movies, any other movie with a scene like that, it's like instant memory. It just, that goes into the bank, but everything else, no.
I thought some of the scenes were somewhat creative, like the whole chalkboard sequence, and just a few more, the more like illusions that she sees throughout the movie. It's nothing like mind blowing, but I definitely thought there was a bit more of an atmosphere here than what you might otherwise expect.
Yeah, I mean, there's decent effects in the movie, and like you said, that chalkboard scene, yeah, that probably does stand out a little bit, but I couldn't help but feel it was kind of like ripping off Freddy Krueger going through the wall in the original movie. So, yeah, it just, I mean, yeah, a lot of these things I've kind of either seen before, or I think, though, the main thing is that I enjoyed the first movie. It's a slasher movie. And now this one's turned the slasher into a supernatural movie. And I'm more of a slasher guy than a supernatural guy. I know you are, but because you didn't really care for the first movie, that kind of plays into its favor, I guess, for you. But yeah, it just didn't stand out for me. Not a bad movie, just it's just okay. I guess one thing, I mean, I've got notes on this, so this is why I remember it, but there's just a few little things in the movie that were just stood out, I guess. Like, there's just random moments where certain people in the movie have, like, weird outbursts. Like, early on in the movie, there's a poor guy just asking for some girl's attention. She's like, "Get lost, asshole." And I don't even think he really did anything. And then you got this like judgy priest talking about violence on television sets, and I'm like, fuck you. And we even got this Fabio looking ass boyfriend who plays volleyball like a bitch. And there's one moment where the lead actress is like, "You shut your fucking mouth, bitch." And I don't know, it's just some weird random outbursts, I thought.
I have to say, my favorite thing about that last scene is how the principal just walks by without saying anything.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, she's probably right, that girl is pretty much a bitch, so.
Though I do commend that one girl on a bribe attempt to win prom queen.
Yeah, I almost fought bad for it. I don't, but like trying to seduce it. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't know. I didn't go to my prom, so I have no idea how they do that, if they even do that nowadays. I'm assuming if they do, it's a lot more non-biased than having the student do it. But yeah, trying to win the prom queen just by engaging in such behavior seems, I mean, a bit iffy. I guess the question is, who is the worst character in the movie? Is it Mary Lou, or is it Vicky's mother?
Yeah, the mother. Now that I'm just trying to recall her, but I do remember she was a bit of a bitch. Look, I mean, Mary Lou is... Yeah, I mean, she cheats on the guy she's with, and she doesn't really seem like anyone to root for, so...
No, but the mother's just so unbearably horrible that
yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with her being called the worst person in the movie, yeah.
In fact, there's a scene in which the mother sort of gets, I think, psychically thrown out of the front door glass pane, and I was happy with that. No, and actually, on that note, there's not that many great death scenes in the movie. I mean, this one girl gets crushed in the locker, another one gets hung and then flung out the window. So nothing in that department really stands out, but I still think there's enough small interesting things here. One thing I did want to mention, this is one of those really small things that probably would get brought up a lot, but there's a character in this movie, oh god, what was her name? Jessica, played by an actress named Beth Gandig. And she's like an alternative girl, has sort of a punk look to her, but she has a pretty emotional scene somewhat early on in the movie, which for I don't see that many like scenes in 80s horror movies that really get to me, but her performance in that scene, and she's crying and such in the bathroom, I thought that was a pretty quality scene, and surprisingly decent for this type of movie. So even though this actress has only done like 7 movies and she's probably dead now, kudos to her. The ending must have been iffy though, so I'll give you that. Actually, the ending reminded me of the ending of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And also there's a SK Wrecking Horse, so a lot of cool things going on. So I'm going to throw this movie. I watched this earlier today just to make sure my rating before was correct. And even though it may seem a little high, I think I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to be giving this an 8.5 out of 10, and I'll lower that down to an 8 out of 10. I think it's nothing like innovative, but it's a movie I have a lot of fun with. There's a lot of like zany characters, the whole like potato science thing, just like random stuff going on. I have a fun time with this movie, and it doesn't seem nearly as dry, in my view, as the first Prom Night does. So that is my point of view, 8 out of 10. Take it or leave it.
That rating is too damn high.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10. And look, basically, I think earlier we summed it up that, look, if you didn't like the first movie, you should still give this one a shot just because it's way different. And if you did like the first movie, I mean, you might still like this movie, I don't know. But, I mean, for me, I liked the first movie. I didn't really care for it being turned into something completely different, something unrelated, turned into a supernatural movie. And yeah, I mean, look, it's an 80s movie. You probably have some sort of okay time with it, even if you don't love it, but as long as you're into 80s movies, I mean, you can't have a terrible time with it, at least not in my opinion, but yeah, it just didn't work for me. Who knows though, maybe, I'll watch it again 5 years later and I'll completely flip my opinion on it. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I was going to request it for the next week's show, so.
Well, look, I watched it twice in the past couple of weeks, so
that is impressive.
I don't know if that's going to work. I think it might need a few years on, let it rest for a little while before we tackle that one again. Moving on to Blood Widow from 2014, which is about a couple who they buy a house near an abandoned boarding school, but they have no idea that there's still a lone survivor of a massacre living in that abandoned building. Now, this is okay. It's a low budget horror movie, so look, there's definitely a lot of things to kind of critique here. I guess let's start with the acting. So I think the acting is below average, but I guess you could say it's acceptable for this type of budget. Though the characters, not really anyone to root for, and a part of that is just because the acting ain't great. You don't really. None of the actors in here make you really care too much about the characters. Maybe the lead actress, but that's only because her boyfriend was such a dick, and you kind of feel sorry for her being so patient with this stupid asshole. But look, the movie as a whole, not so good. I think the Blood Widow character, is somewhat intriguing. And I might touch more on that as we discuss the movie, but overall, it's a below average movie. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is going to, I guess, sort of spike off one of the more maybe involved conversations of the night. I had a hard time rating this movie and Deja Vu, which we'll discuss later. I think both movies are pretty terrible. And both of them have different reasons. Even right now, I'm not sure which one I disliked more. But my main issue with this one is it's only 80 minutes, so it's not a very long movie. But there's also not much that happens. We get very, very little character development. And the character development we do get like you said, the guy's a dick, so who cares if he has a bad time, boo-hoo. And I don't know, like most of the scenes with the dismemberment and such, I mean, they're pretty weak overall. Some of them were like I'm pretty sure nobody's that strong enough to just chop off a head in a single go. It just seemed a bit ridiculous. You don't really get that much. We don't really know that much about this whole Black Widow individual. They look cool, but even so, I just looking cool. It does not excuse a lack of I don't know, intrigue. I mean, because at times you sort of, given what little we know about this character, you sort of want to not necessarily root for them, but at least understand why they're doing what they're doing. And there's not really much in the way of sympathy, because it's just complete failure to even try to engage anybody. Oh, hey, this is what's going on. It just, I don't know. I like some of the more grey morality antagonists, and you would, given this background of this character, you would expect Black Widow to sort of fit that, just fit the idea, but the character really doesn't. And I don't know. I have no problem with low quality movies, and the quality of this one actually made me think it could have been better than what it was. I just think the story and script was extraordinarily lacking. There's only, in my opinion, there's only one character, even worth remembering, and it's a stereotypical hippie character, who is nature lava, takes acid, and I think her name's even Harmony. So, it's like they're trying to put as many stereotypes into this one caricature of a hippie, and it's just utterly ridiculous. But she's like the only character I had any interest in, and we'll always see where that gets her. So.
Yeah, well, she doesn't last all that long. Look, yeah, the Blood Widow character, played by Gabrielle Ann Henry, I think the character's intriguing, but yes, we definitely need to know more about the character. There's just, there's not a whole lot that we know. But I do, obviously, the character looks cool, so I like the design. I think she moves quite well, at least in the scenes that aren't using some sort of speed change. Like, there's certain scenes where they just accelerate the frame rate, I guess. Like that, I think there's one scene where she kind of chops off, what was it, 1 or 2 heads at the same time? It just happens just unnaturally quick. Yeah, and that happens a couple of times throughout the movie where they kind of speed things up. But outside of that, I think she moves pretty well. So it's just more of a matter of, let's get some more story on this character.
I have to say one thing that sort of, it didn't necessarily interest me, but there was a big point made out of whose vehicle that was outside. I guess I didn't recognize it. But it's like 8 people sleeping on the floor. So did they think that I'll just walk there? It's a small point that came. I just didn't get it. Like, it seems like those people on the floor just sort of disappeared, or they were sort of sleeping when all this stuff went down, or they just went home in somebody else's unseen vehicle. It's just like a very small point, but something that easily either didn't need to be mentioned, or they just didn't need to have those characters on the floor. So that's again just, it seems like script writing 101 in my view, which might make sense given that, from my understanding, this movie was made by a bunch of people who I think just graduated some film thing in college. So
yeah,
but even so, I feel like they probably could have done a little better with the idea they had.
To be honest, I think for someone, making their first film just from graduating whatever college or program that they are doing, it doesn't look too bad. Yeah, there's just a bunch of details that it needs, and it needs more to the story. Definitely, it could have done with just an overall better script. But in terms of just the production value and things like that, it didn't look too bad.
Yeah, actually, I think the production value might be one of the, I guess, quote-unquote, bad things in the movie.
I mean, it's got a 2.9 on IMDb when I last checked, and look, I'm not going to say the movie deserves a good score, but to be honest, I think it's a little bit better than that. I've seen movies where I've given, 1s and 2s, and this is certainly slightly better quality than some of those. Anyways, I guess another thing that didn't really work well in its favor is it seems to have gotten a whole bunch of popular horror movie websites giving publicity to this movie, at least when it came out. because you can see in the credits it thanks it thanks all the different websites, obviously the big ones like Bloody Disgusting, and I think there was Dread Central and all these other ones.
I was actually impressed by all the names they had.
Yeah, so, and I think I remember back in the day when this did come out that, you know, they were kind of doing a couple of posts about this, so they definitely gave it a lot of publicity to get it recognized. And they also thanked their Facebook fans, so fans might be a stretch with that IMDb rating, but I guess every movie out there has its fan base, even if it's small. And actually, while we're on the topic of IMDb, I noticed there was supposedly a sequel for this, but I don't think it's had any updates since 2017. So
well, hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah. If they are going to make a sequel, I hope the guy that made the first one, you know, he listens to what the fans are saying about this one. Clearly, there's a lot of issues that people have with this movie, and I don't think it's a complete wreck. Like, they've got a somewhat decent, intriguing character to actually do something with, and if they can actually listen to all those critiques about the first movie, who knows, maybe they can make something half watchable for the second movie, if they do make a second. I guess just a couple other things that I had down here. Look, first off, man, that party sucks. I mean,
yeah.
Oh, it's a type of party that I would hate to be at. You know, people just randomly jumping up and down to repetitive music, and it's just not my idea of a fun time. But I guess, you know, that's what a lot of other people enjoy. One other thing is, it's pretty frustrating when movies go with the easy route of having the whole there's no mobile phone reception here. It's like such a cheap, or it's like a cheap device to help the scare factor, or, you know, when someone needs help they can't call for help, that type of thing. It's just, I just wish movies would kind of knock that type of thing off. I mean, it's 2014, it's not like 2000. I mean, I get they're out in the sticks, but even here you go to a rural area like that, a place with even less houses, and you still get reception. So I don't know how it is in America. Maybe they got really shitty phone providers. Who knows?
Well, we have really shitty everything. But even so, I still think it doesn't strike me as extraordinarily realistic.
I mean, every single phone has no reception. I mean, that just, I can understand maybe one or two, depending who the carrier is, maybe, but yeah, it just, that just annoys me. And I guess the only other point here that I had was just the way the movie ends. Look, I'm all good with the, you know, not having such a nice, happy ending, but it just feels like the movie's still missing an ending. And maybe that comes down to the fact that we still know nothing about this character, you know, come in, kill everyone, and that's about it. I don't know. Maybe that's why a sequel should happen, because we need something more to go on with the way this ended, but clearly, you know, with how much people enjoyed this movie, I'm sure no one's going to cry if they don't make this sequel.
Somewhat, I'm not sure if it's ironic, but honestly, a sequel could be much worse. So, I mean, I don't know if they have anything to lose. I did what you point out, one quick thing. It's just one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in the movie. So, there's a scene toward the end when this one guy and this other guy are going through a house, and they have a conversation which roughly goes like this: check the other rooms. Hey, I'm not checking the other rooms. Please, check the other rooms. Find what room. Hey, that room. And that's the conversation. It was, yeah, it was just great. That's really all I had.
Mwah. That's beautiful screenwriting.
Yeah, I like that dialogue. It's some good stuff.
Yeah, so Blood Widow. It's kind of impressive if you're going from the standpoint of someone just randomly making their first movie, but look, compared to everything else that's out there, it's not very good. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. When I first watched it, I was thinking a 3, because I actually watched this maybe last year, and yeah, I didn't dislike it as much the second time around, but it's still definitely not a good movie.
Yeah, so this one, like I said, the preface of my talking about this, I really didn't care for this. I feel like they could have made this movie in 60 minutes and it would have been a bit more bearable. They had made it like 50 minutes, then we're talking about like maybe this is a good movie. There's just some small changes they could have made. Not even giant script overhauls, just small changes they could have made to make this a little more palatable. As it is though, I had a hard time with this one. Despite some of the things I liked about it, such as my homegirl Harmony, and her giant Buddha statue for some reason. I just couldn't find it within me to take mercy on this movie. So I'm throwing this one a 2 out of 10.
That's a beautiful score for a beautiful movie.
I know, it just keeps getting better.
Wow. When the sequel comes out, you'll be all over it.
Yeah, and of course, if the sequel does come out, we will always be happy to watch it. Happy might be a strong word, but we'll watch it.
Yeah, just if they ever do like a GoFundMe or something, Jiggy will be right there to donate $80 for a Blu-ray.
Yeah, just to see my name at the credits. So. This next movie is from Australia.
Oh yeah.
Indeed. Which I actually did not know. So, this next movie is Carol Campaign from 2016. Now, before I get into the plot, well, I'll go with the plot first. Basically, there's sort of like, there's an old show back on the Sci-Fi Station, at least in America, titled Scare Tactics, in which a group of people went around trying to scare people. And this movie has the same idea. A bunch of people do a TV show where they do elaborate pranks to scare people, but they're told by Apple management, hey, you have to spice things up a little more extreme. So they go to this abandoned institution, mental institution, and they have their guy they're trying to scare, thinks he's coming there for a guardian job, and they have the idea, hey, let's make him think there's a ghost haunting this place. And then things happen, some twists happen, and, well, I mean, it's a movie really where if you don't know that much going in, I think it's probably better for you. And I say that because I honestly did not know almost anything about this movie before going in. I knew the name, and I think I read the plot once, but none of it stuck with me before I actually started watching it. I didn't even know, oh god, what's her name? The chick from The Visit, about to watch out, Olivia something. But she's in this movie, and she actually does a pretty good job too. It's a movie that took me by surprise, and I'm never going to say it's a great movie, but it was definitely a movie that surprised me, and some of the twists, legitimately, like, I was like, oh my god, that's actually pretty cool. And I have a few things to say about this one, but before I do, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, it's first time watch for me. I had heard of the movie before in the past couple of years, but yeah, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know it was Australian either, and I'm from Australia, so there you go. Yeah, I had the notes down to reference Scare Tactics, and because that's a show that, you know, it had its popularity back, I don't know, a decade, or well over a decade ago, I believe. I'll watch it from time to time for a bit of a laugh, but at the end of the day, it gets a bit repetitive with its pranks. You get tired of it after a little bit. So yeah, this one, same as you. I felt like, even though it's still not a great movie, it did take me by surprise a little bit. I was quite engaged throughout the whole thing, especially with some twists and turns that take place later on in the movie. So I think, you know, overall, I thought it was a decent watch. I mean, look, there's early on when they're discussing the spicing up of the show, she shows these, I guess you can call them competitors, these masked freaks, and I to be honest, I almost completely forgot about them once they start doing this new elaborate prank in this old hospital or whatever you want to call it. I actually completely forgot about them. So when they actually, spoiler alert, when they actually turned up, they rolled in like a bunch of neon maniacs or something. That just took it up a notch, and it shit hits the fan, man.
Yeah, so I have two things to say about that. One, I was anticipating they would come up in some form or another. I would have been surprised if they hadn't. So I was happy they did. Another thing, when they first came, I'll be admit, I had like a gut reaction to not caring much for it, because I was immediately reminded of the movie Haunt from 2019, which I believe we talked about. Because they have like all this freakish, mask and stuff. And I was like, I had a very sour reaction to it, because I thought, oh god, I hope they don't do what Hound tried to do. Or what other Hound was trying to do, because I still don't know what they're trying to do. But luckily, it's not that bad, and I grew to enjoy it a bit more. So that's my opinion on the Masked Freaks.
Yeah. And I think another thing the movie does fairly well is it did keep me guessing quite a bit. Like, there's a prank, but then you're wondering, wait, who are they actually pranking here? Are they pranking the guy that, they're interviewing about this job? Are they pranking the lead woman? I forgot her name, but, and then, okay, that prank happens, and then there's a prank within a prank, and then is there another prank within a prank within a prank? It's just...
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a very unique and pretty clever movie. Even if it was executed perfectly, I thought it was a very clever movie.
Here's a question. I'm not sure on this, and I don't think I would, but would you consider it a found footage movie?
I would mostly lean toward no, mainly because, well, there might have been a few like first-person views and a few views from cameras and such. Since it was really the main focus, I guess you could say in some of the more, I guess, intense sequences, they were more of a primary focus. But I would say it's probably at least in my view, a bit of a stretch to call it found footage.
Yeah, I guess there are a lot of footage elements, but still the majority of the movie is not watching, found footage.
Yeah, I'm never going to say that found footage, at least a more usage of it in the movie would have been a negative thing. I'm sure these people could have come up with a clever way to do it. But I was generally happy with the way they went. Although I will say, just one quick note, there was one, I guess you could say, quote-unquote, final twist, which I saw that coming from almost the beginning, but I still appreciated the way they went with it. And the ending itself was somewhat even, you could say, subtle. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm not, that's one thing I'm not sure about. Like, I didn't have any major issues with the ending, but at the same time, I'm still not sure if that ending is what I would have liked for it to do. I'm just not sure about that ending. I probably have to watch the movie again to have a better opinion on that.
What was your favorite death scene?
Jeez, now I have to remember.
There's one guy that gets his face sliced off. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or did he? Wink, wink.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I watched this over a week ago, and
that's okay.
Unfortunately, I just can't remember that level of detail to really say what the best kill in the movie was. But look, I will say overall, the violence and deaths in the movie, they're fine. You're certainly not going to be terribly disappointed with it, even though that's not really its main focus. It's not a movie where it's just going into show you the goriest kills or anything like that. That's not what it's trying to do. But look, there's some decent death in the movie.
And I guess before we get to ratings, I did also want to mention, and I may not pronounce her name right, but Olivia de Jong. She is the actress who was both in The Visit and Better Watch Out. I really liked. She wasn't really a main character. She had maybe 5 scenes, but I really liked her sort of. I mean, she's a pretty young character. She has a very almost upbeat feel to her. She's getting into this, scare tactic-esque company, and she just seems to have a really fun time with it. I thought she was a lot of fun. even though I really liked Megan Warner, who was, I think, the main actress, I think the three main performances, Warner, Ian Mathers, and Olivia, I think our three did a pretty good job bringing this movie together. I feel like with some last performances, it may not have worked out as well. Because even Ian Mathers, at times he seems like quite a bit of a dick, but other times you sort of see where he's coming from. So I think it just worked out nicely.
Yeah, look, I think there's some decent performances in the movie, sorry. I mean, no one's winning any awards here, but look, for a low-budget movie that most people probably haven't heard of, look, I'm sure it will surprise a few people out there.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to throw this one, and this is another one I had to think a bit about. I'm going to throw this one at 7.5 and round that down to a 7. I think it's really close to being an average movie, but it's just a few things in the movie that sort of take it up a small notch for me. But overall, I'll probably just rate this around average. But it's definitely a movie that if you haven't heard about and you're into more modern age slasher-esque type things, I would definitely recommend giving this one a watch.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit above average, so I'm going to also give it a 7. I had a decent time with this. I'm not quite sure how the next viewing will fare, but look, it certainly surprised me. It kept me engaged. It's not too long, so yeah, I think people out there should have a decent time with this one. Anywho, let's move on to Miss 45 from 1981, which is about a timid and mute seamstress who goes insane after being attacked and raped twice in one day, which is, the worst luck of anyone in the world, I guess.
That's not what you should say about those who died in Hiroshima.
Wow, okay. But, as the movie goes along, she takes to the streets of New York City when it's dark, and she randomly goes out and shoots men with a .45 caliber pistol. Kind of like a female version of Death Wish in some ways, not entirely, but in some ways. Look, this is a movie I've seen quite a few times. I quite enjoy this one. Abel Ferrara, he's got his certain fan base out there, and while I don't necessarily seek to watch everything he's made, I have watched quite a few of his movies, and I do tend to enjoy his style of filmmaking.
Yeah, so this is a movie I've obviously heard about this movie before, never seen it before. It had I know it came out 81, had a very, very 70s feel to it, which I appreciated, since the 70s was sort of the golden age of exploitation, in my opinion.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it was filmed in the late 70s.
Yeah, I would not be surprised.
I think, but I'm not 100% certain.
I'll be shocked if it wasn't. I mean, it just legitimately felt like it came out 78, 79. And so I really appreciate the feel of the movie. The story itself feels a little bit aimless, which may be somewhat of the point, but the scenes in this movie I enjoyed. I enjoyed the ending. It's at least to me, it's not one of those movies I can imagine sitting down to watch for fun. It's just a sort of depressing movie more than anything. I mean, there's some funny scenes to be sure, and there's some random Middle Eastern Arab guys in limousines, but I just have a hard time imagining coming back to this one too many times. Though I will say it's well made, and it's certainly more enjoyable than The Driller Killer.
The funny thing about this is, apparently this is like a really low budget movie. I can't remember the exact budget, but like, there's so many different things they did in this movie. You mentioned the Arab guy, who I don't know who actually plays the Arab guy, but I know the voice is actually of the director, so it's not the voice of the person playing him. And the director, Abel Ferrara, he also plays the first rapist in the movie, so like he plays or has involvement in multiple characters in this movie. So do the I think there was a producer. He's the guy playing saxophone at the party. Like they had to actually get involved because they couldn't afford to do certain things, and yeah, it's just, I don't know. They seem to have accomplished a lot with quite a little, I think. Even the dog in the movie, they just picked up this dog from the pound. It's not like a trained dog. And apparently it slayed every scene it was in. They said one take, the dog was fantastic. So, yeah, just a lot of little things like that was just interesting to hear about. Now, I guess with any conversation on this movie, you'd have to discuss the lead actress, Zoe. Well, depending on what, I mean, she's got two different names. I presume one before marriage, one after marriage. Zoe Temerlis or Zoe Lund. But I think that's a really good debut, especially since she was only, I believe she was only 17 when they filmed this. So that's, I don't know how you can really fault her performance, especially being her first movie she's in at that age.
Yeah, I think pretty much most of the performance is pretty good. I did like the scenes where I forget the boss's name, but when her boss was like hitting on her, and she was just giving her those calm on eyes, and I really like that boss character. He might be one of my favorites, but
he does have a bit of a creepiness, yeah.
Because at first he seemed like a pretty decent guy, but then he has a scene where he's like, "You ought to go with me to the party." This guy, he just cracked me up. So yeah, I think most of the main performances are pretty good, especially for the budget they didn't have to work with. I think a lot of it came out pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, some people out there call it the ultimate feminist movie. I'm not so sure about that, but I mean, she kind of becomes demented and she starts mowing down innocent guys. And
yeah, I'm going to say, as a committed feminist myself, I didn't see it as some sort of like feminist like overture. Especially, like I understand some of where she's coming from. Like that one guy who's chasing her down because he thinks she dropped something. That guy might be a bit aggressive, but you should at least see what he's doing maybe before you open fire. Just my opinion.
Yeah, well, I guess, when someone's chasing after you after you've just been raped twice, you can certainly expect maybe that type of reaction, yeah.
I have to admit, I don't blame him for that guy with the quote-unquote magazine shoot. That guy was just annoying as fuck.
That one Asian guy was lucky enough to get away, and like he was probably the most innocent guy she was after, or maybe outside of some of the guys at the party at the end. But yeah, that would have been unfortunate. I also like the just kind of offbeat music in this one. It's just, I don't know, it's one of those ones where the music just is stuck in my head even years after watching this movie. I keep getting that music from the party at the end stuck in my head all the time. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so you brought up the main actress Zoe Land. She honestly, I've never heard of her before, so I'm just reading a bit about her. She died pretty young. Looks like from...
I think she had like a lung infection, but the thing is, she was also doing a lot of hardcore drugs as well. So
yeah, I see that she apparently really enjoyed heroin and advocated for its legal recreational use quality. That's sort of amusing.
I believe she started getting on the hardcore drugs not long after this movie, but apparently she didn't smoke, drink, or do any drugs at the time of doing this movie. So
well, she was only 17. I would hope she.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure within a year of this movie, she actually went down that route. And from what I've read and heard about, I mean, she's quite talented. Apparently, she could speak 5 different languages. She was a musician. She could write. She could act. I've seen her in a couple other movies as well. So yeah, she's definitely talented, and just a bit of a shame that someone dies that young. I mean, I'm currently around that age that she died, so I can't imagine, being done with life at this age, but there you go. Some people live in the fast lane, I guess.
And I was going to make some analogy about the fast lane, but I'm not going to do it. So I would say I appreciated the ending with the dog. I was hoping. I mean, I didn't have much hope because she was pretty out of it by then. I was hoping she would have done anything negative toward the dog, so I really did appreciate the ending. So it warmed my heart.
Well, the funny thing is about that ending is, because I was watching a interview with Abel Ferrara, and he mentioned that Zoe stole the print to the movie, and she started doing her own illegal screenings of the movie, where she cut out the dog ending because she wanted the movie to end with her as the last frame. So, I don't know, just kind of interesting factoid there.
I can see why that might be problematic.
But in any case, yeah, I mean, this is a movie that I enjoy quite a bit. I like the offbeat music and the style in which it's shot, and yeah, there's a lot to like about it, especially if you enjoy that whole vigilante type aspect, you know, Death Wish, and it's got some similarities to that. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10. I say go for it.
Yeah, so I've never seen Death Wish. It's probably an okay movie. And this movie is okay too. Like I said, my main issue with it is it felt past a certain point somewhat aimless, and even though some of the stuff was interesting, such as like the final party, that's a pretty intense scene. It wasn't something I like entirely enjoyed. It was decently made, especially given what they had to work with. And I think I'm going to give it a 6, mainly because I would give it a 7 if only I enjoyed it a bit more. It's sort of a decent movie, and if you're into like revenge exploitation type movies and you haven't seen this one, I'd recommend watching it. But it's not a movie that necessarily did that much for me, despite the Arab guy. So we finish off tonight with I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu. This is the sequel to the original 1978 I Spit on Your Grave. Has the same main actress in it, Camilla Keaton, playing Jennifer Hills. And in this, she has a daughter, and both she and her daughter get kidnapped by people who took issue with Jennifer Hills' book. She wrote a book about both her rapes, multiple rapes from the first movie, and the way that she dispatched them. And apparently she was found innocent in the court of law, which sort of surprised me. But she's somewhat well known. She gets radio talk shows and such. Her daughter is a famous model, apparently. I don't know how, but she is. And they get kidnapped and things happen to them. Well, a lot of things happen to them. This one thing that's really important to talk about as far as this movie is concerned, and that's the fact that it's 2.5 hours long. But I'm going to talk at length about that. Not as long as this movie is, but I'll talk at length about that. But so things happen, and they try to escape and deal with what they have to deal with, and that and some graves and stuff. What do you think about this one?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got so many points written down about this movie. It's crazy. Two things I need to say first, though, is that if you haven't listened to our review of the original movie, you should go check out that. That was
one of our best reviews.
One of our best discussions. The other thing I want to say is that there's probably going to be lots of spoilers mentioned here. I just can't really... I can't envision us discussing this movie without discussing certain things that happen in the movie, so just keep that in mind if you choose to continue watching if you haven't seen the movie. Now, I paid $2.99 American to rent this. In a weird way, I feel like I got my money's worth, only because of the quantity, but not necessarily the quality. And I might have to break this down a little bit into different areas, like we can just talk about the plot maybe first. I actually think the basic plot of this is actually okay. I think there's something here that they could have used to make a good sequel. You know, the whole aspect of these Hicks being unhappy with her making money on the blood of their dead relatives or husbands, or you know, whatever relation that they were. I think there's something there that they could do, but clearly the movie is way too long. I don't know what the script for this looked like, but it's so long. I don't know what the the director was going for here. He must have thought he was making his Dark Knight to his Batman Begins. It just, I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I mean, I think he's about 80 years old, so maybe that's a part of it. The movie moves at the pace of the director's age. Just so slow. There's so many scenes that are just drawn out way too long. 3 times longer than they need to be, hence the 2.5 hour runtime. And look, the funny thing is, there's actually not a lot of rape in this movie. At least, I mean, technically, a whole bunch of it could be considered rape, but I mean, in terms of just visually watching someone having sex unwillingly, there's not a whole lot of that. But just when I thought there was actually not going to be really any of that in the movie, they brought it in for no real reason. I didn't really feel like it was necessary for this movie. I guess they brought it in just because, well, you gotta have it because the first one had it, and that's a big part of the first one, so let's have it in this one. So I think the plot, they had something to go with here, but the dialogue and all the drawn-out scenes, it's just, that did nothing. Or nothing really to help the movie.
Yeah, so one of, I guess you could say, the main motivations for these, I think we can, with respect, call them Redneck Hicks, because they seem to be okay with the way they're living their life, which is fine. I'm not like some, I live in a small town in Indiana, so I'm like not throwing any stones, but going after like people from the big city just because you don't have an internet connection, it just let's calm down. So the main motivations are revenge, and it's not only just revenge, but it's biblical revenge, because they're like a bunch of, I guess, there are a bunch of religious nutcases who don't see anything wrong with kidnapping, torture, and rape and mutilation and such, so it's sort of religious. I mean, I guess when it's convenient to them, Jesus matters. I can respect the moral compass, but when the moral compass says it's wrong for a woman who's been raped multiple times to go after those who raped her, it's a bit iffy. I do want to mention one thing I'm going to give the movie kudos for, and there are actually a few things I legitimately liked about this movie. There is a scene in which the 4 characters are standing in a graveyard, and they have the graves of the 4 characters from the first movie, and it does show flashbacks to these characters in case nobody's seen it since 1978, so you know what's going on. But there's again, it's too long of a scene, but there's a scene where they're standing and sort of like the main woman's sort of talking to her long dead husband, and it's not necessarily emotional, but you can sort of see where she's coming from.
But she has snot running from her nose. At least that's what it looked like, but I don't think she was crying. I can't recall.
I think you're right, and that was somewhat distracting. And it was, like I said, it's not like it's emotional anyway. Like, if I found out my significant other was like a rapist, I feel like some of my love for them might die a little, but, maybe I have higher standards. Like, maybe that's okay for these people. Especially since they, I believe, called her this Paula Sainting because she was tempting the men who raped her. And this, but it's just a beautiful victim blaming. And then thinking kidnapping them, and I know it's interesting story wise. And I think it probably could have been done using the same story. It just probably could have been executed a bit better. I don't know. And there are some characters who I thought were a bit more interesting than that. So I don't know. What's your next, I guess, interesting point to discuss with this one? Because there's so many places we could go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the characters and the acting in the movie. Now, the autism levels are just off the charts on some of these characters. It's insane. I don't really get it. I mean, they've got this one hick, Herman. He just comes in like Simple Jack from Tropic Thunder, where he's like, I got feelings, I'm a Herman being. It's just... I don't know what... and then we've got, another hick who... It feels like the director just said, what's popular? Rob Zombie's popular. Put some Rob Zombie into your character, and he's confused. Like, am I meant to look like Rob Zombie? Am I just portraying his usual characters? Fuck it. I'll just go with a amalgamation of all Rob Zombie characters and Rob Zombie himself. And
plus he likes flowers.
yeah, and he loves flowers just to give him some edge. These characters just I can't even describe it. It's fucked.
Yeah, I would just say one quick thing about the main woman. Every time I heard her voice, I immediately thought of Roseanne, the old sitcom. Like, every time I heard her voice, I just couldn't get it out of my head, and it sort of ruined the character for me. I mean, she was bad anyway, but...
And look, this movie immediately gets one less point because she got her tits out. Look, usually I'm all for women in the movies getting their babylons out, but not this one, no.
You never had a real woman?
I believe it's Maria Olsen. I mean, she's got an impressive number of acting credits, I'll give her that. She's got like over 200 acting credits, I believe, but yeah, those titties were the opposite of impressive. I can't even think of the right word to describe it because I had to endure the thought of those tits, but no, that did not help.
Did you at least like the drunk woman?
Well, see, that's another thing here, is that it almost seemed like every single character in the movie is just not normal. I mean, at least the people, you know, outside of the mother and daughter main characters. I mean, I get it's a small town, but it's kind of fucked that finding a perfect fitting pair of jeans is easier to find than a normal human being. So, yeah, it's just, I mean, come on, surely there's got to be someone normal out there. But anyways, there's some stupid dialogue from some of these characters too. Like that first time Jennifer escapes from, you know, they're about to hang her and she escapes, and then I forget her name, the character played by Maria Olsen. She goes on this really long-winded speech about how they're gonna get her and all this kind of stuff. That's just one of those examples of where all you have to say is, we're gonna get you, and, you know, kind of just leave it at that. You don't need to go on a 2-minute Academy Award winning type speech about how you're gonna get her, and it just like she's already run off half a mile down by the time you finish talking. I mean, come on. And then there's a guy, you know, who's got her daughter, and she's like, I need to go pee, or and he's like, nobody pees in my van. I mean, look, if you look at your van, it's got to be like the easiest van to clean piss out of. I mean, there's no carpet or anything in it.
It makes me wonder what his backstory is. Probably that's the reason.
Yeah.
So there is one small thing that there might be slight disagreement on. I actually think Holman's character, played by Jim Tavari, was actually decent. There were some problems with it. So basically, some backstory on this character. He is apparently the father of Matthew from the first movie. And if you guys don't remember, Matthew was the mentally handicapped guy who was sort of involved in the whole thing, the whole rape in the first movie. It's my personal opinion that maybe Jennifer from the first movie shouldn't have gone after him, because not being mentally competent of what you're doing, it was sort of like a very grey area for me. So there's a scene, one of the, I think, his earliest scenes, where he has a picture of his son saying, well, he can't articulate very well, but Holman's basically saying, hey, why did you kill him? And you know what? I think this movie is horrible in a lot of ways, but I'm going to give that guy some credit. He thoroughly came across to me as a mentally challenged guy, and I thought at least some portions of his performance were actually pretty decent.
I would say Herman's house is way nicer than you'd expect it to look.
I wonder whose house it actually was.
Yeah. It's even got like a brand spanking new looking fridge as well.
And not only does it have a nice fridge, that fridge is loaded. There's so much food in there. That's a really nice fridge.
So look, trying to find some things in the movie that maybe aren't so bad. I thought the production value of this was actually a little bit better than I was expecting it to be. The movie doesn't look as, I guess, low budget and as amateurish as I was expecting it to look for someone who hasn't really made a movie in like 40 years, if memory serves correctly. Has he actually made anything other than the original I Spit on Your Grave? I can't recall.
Apparently, he did have a movie from the mid-80s, Don't Mess With My Sister, from 85. Aside from that, though, it doesn't look like he's really done much.
Yeah. So I would have said that, look, the movie looks okay. Like, if you're not listening to anyone talk and you're not focusing on how long the movie is, if you just look at it, you know, this looks professionally shot enough to be considered something that, you know, could have been good, but I just have no idea what they're thinking of with this runtime. And, I mean, there are a couple of goofs here and there in the movie as well, which aren't all that unexpected. I mean, look, I think one good thing in the movie is that I think, well, I wouldn't say the scenes still turned out great, but I think the idea of it was pretty good, where, you know, the daughter sees her mother with her head cut off. I mean, that I thought the idea of that scene could have been, like, really gut-wrenching, and I mean, it is to a certain degree, but, you know, we've had to endure all this crap dialogue and drawn-out scenes to the point where, you know, that takes away a little bit from it.
You're saying you're like hillbilly woman on the ATV coming after people.
Even though the head gets cut off, later on there's scenes where, you know, she's getting pulled out of the grave. She clearly has a head attached.
Yeah. Maybe they got the mortician very quickly just to show it out.
Wrapped up in the sheets. You can see there's clearly a head on this body. I guess the other thing is, look, there are a couple of somewhat decent kills in the movie. You know, one guy gets shot directly up the ass. There's a broken bottle scene, cutting of the penis. And those, I think the two best death scenes in this movie, those two that I just described, they actually happen quite close to one another. I'd like to say they happen within a few minutes, but it could have been 15 minutes for all the fuck I know, with how long this movie went on. But they felt quite close together. So it's just a shame that there's, you know, just way too much dialogue and not enough things moving along for you to be entertained up until that point, because those two deaths happen closer towards the end.
Yeah, and unfortunately the death of one of the main antagonists, the woman, isn't really all that satisfying. At least I didn't find it particularly satisfying.
No.
Mainly because the kid, it just, I mean, I wouldn't recommend you watch it, but just watch it. Yeah, also, there's one thing I wanted to mention. So this movie, I'm not sure if this was its intent, but you could argue, I'm not going to make the argument because I don't think they really went out of the way to try to get the audience to think this, but the whole idea that revenge is just a circular thing, it just continues on and on and on, because obviously the main character, Jessica from the first movie, gets raped and she gets revenge, and now these characters get revenge on her and her daughter, and now then she gets revenge on them, and at the end of the movie, one of the antagonists of the movie has children, and you sort of wonder, hey, are they, and they saw this, they saw the daughter, are they also going to get revenge? Is just going to keep going and going and going? It's not really like a particularly deep idea, but you could, it's, you know, theoretically, you could argue that that's what the movie is going for, like, oh hey, revenge is a dish best served, not at all, because it just keeps going. Well, actually, one thing I did think it was sort of funny and hypocritical, that the main woman is going after the city folk, but then her children live in the city and she calls them honest people. Like, yeah, it's beautiful. Oh, I will say, I did, as much as the scene itself didn't entirely work in my opinion, the death of Jennifer was actually pretty. I like to find the words like, "Oh, I spit on his grave." It might be a bit, "Ooh, she saw the name of the movie," but she went out with a bang, and that's one thing that sort of bothered me. Like throughout most of the whole scenes in the movie, she seemed to just, and I can understand why. If her daughter wasn't there, she probably would have given them a lot more howl. But like in the van, even she did even have tape in her mouth, and that woman was ranting. I would have just told you to shut the hell up, like way early on, like, "Hey, your husband raped me, he deserved it." I understand why she didn't, but she just seemed to. It wasn't really until the end, and I really saw that survival, that, hey, the whole screw you type attitude come back, and I appreciated when it did, even though it didn't last long. Also, I have no idea what was with the whole random woman on that bicycle thingy. No idea.
She got like a inspiration for the character from the crazy cat lady in The Simpsons.
Yeah, and also the guy playing the piano at the church, like, I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of this could have been prevented if you just stopped playing the piano and opened the door early on. Like you said, this town's like not very big, but there has to at least be more than 6 people. I just can't believe the town is that bad. And it just some of this goes beyond the rounds of credibility for me. And even the ending, once she sort of knocked out, and I'll be honest, I actually thought that the daughter died during that scene. She's just hit multiple times as a shovel. That cannot be good for your well-being. But then she is able to get back up and fight back, which is great. But the whole thing, the guy's just ranting about, oh, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and the woman's just, the drunk wife is like cackling behind him. I mean, she's pretty horrible throughout this whole movie. The other random, I don't even know what she's doing. It's just, the whole thing could have been okay. But much like actually Black Widow, could have been okay if they just made a few small, reasonable changes.
And some major cuts.
Yes. Like, I don't know, I mean, I enjoy Titanic. Titanic's a pretty long movie, but some movies don't need to be Titanic. And I'm not sure who thought, "Hey, I spit in your grave too, that should be Titanic length." Like, I don't know what these people were thinking. Maybe if Leonardo DiCaprio had played one like the Hillbillies, it would have been worth watching. And actually, one more note. I'm sorry, this just hit me. Because you said you paid, what, $3 for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually paid $8. Because I paid for this movie, I think it's like about $3.99 or so. Because I idiotically wanted to watch it in HD, like that makes a difference. So I paid for it, and then the way it works, if you start watching, you have 48 hours to finish it. And I watched like the first 15 minutes and I hated it, so I didn't actually finish it. So then I rented it again. So I paid $8 for this. Talk about one of the worst financial decisions of my life. Now, I don't take that out in the movie, that's entirely on me, but even so, it's a bad move on my part. I mean, honestly, this movie has to be seen to be believed. Like, you can listen to 2 guys talk about it, but until you actually witness at least some of the scenes and just how drawn out it is, it's not that. I'm not sure if I've seen another movie quite like this. It definitely feels unique, not in a positive way, but it's just mind-blowing almost, just how horrible this came out, especially for such a, not necessarily beloved, but at least respected exploitation movie from the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I was interested in seeing where these characters would go, and yeah, unfortunately, it's just they could have done way better with this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just one more quick thing. I wanted to give respect to the judicial system in that universe, because I would have sworn that Jennifer, after the events of the first movie, probably would have been thrown in jail, but apparently she was found innocent, even after killing some of the people that maybe she shouldn't have. So kudos to those draws. I don't know if I would have written a book about it, but that's like if O.J. Simpson had written a book after his events. That's not maybe the best look. #empowerment. So, like I said at the beginning of this, I had a legitimately difficult time deciding whether I hated this more or less than Black Widow. And after I thought about it, I liked more things in this movie than I did in Black Widow. But at the same time, this movie is also like 50 times the length of Black Widow. So, it doesn't really justify it. So, after consideration, I'm just going to give this a 1 out of 10. And I've given other movies low ratings like that, but this one, I mean, it has a few good things, but it's really, really, really not worth watching. It's still better than The Greasy Strangler, though.
1 out of 10. I thought you would have given it a higher score. Considering it wasn't all terrible.
Yeah, but it was also 2.5 hours. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to give it a 4. And to be honest, I feel like I've trashed it just as much, if not more than you, but like I said, there's certain plot elements here that did keep me engaged. Like, I was interested to see where certain things would go, what certain characters would do. And like I said, the actual idea of, you know, someone looking to get revenge because she's making money on the deaths of their loved ones, even if they did rape her, you know, I feel like there's something there. Yeah, they just went on way too long in almost every scene. There's too much dialogue. Some of the characters are just stupidly ridiculous. But look, I'm not a huge fan of the original. I think it's okay, you know. It has its place, and this one certainly does not do as well as that one did for all these reasons we've discussed.
I will say one thing, and you mentioned this, the production value on this actually feels decent, and the original had a pretty gritty feel to it, but that may just have been because it was, you know, somewhat low budget 70s movie. But I feel like this movie would have at least felt a little more genuine had the production not been quite as high as it seemed to be. Which might seem like an odd... I don't think it would have saved the movie by any means. But honestly, this movie doesn't really feel that gritty to me. Even the one rape scene we get, I mean, the original was like so much more explicit. This one, I mean, it's totally, you know, horrible to see, but it wasn't anywhere near what the first movie did. Are you hoping for a movie 3?
Hopefully they can go the opposite route and make it like 20 minutes long. That'd be nice. Okay, here's a shot out of a cannon. Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger. You gotta fuck one, marry one, kill one. Go!
Oh boy. So, let's see. Never played this game. Quality choices. So I would probably... I feel like Michael would be a calm lover, so I would enjoy Michael's pleasures. I would marry Freddy, mainly because he's funny. The guy's funny. I wouldn't mind living with that guy.
He's a man of your dreams.
Oh boy. He has a sense of humor. I can respect that. Plus, he looks pretty cool in shades. And then I would, quote unquote, what is the third choice? Kill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would, quote unquote, kill Jason, but he always comes back, so it doesn't make any difference anyway.
Yeah. Well, I assume, like, kill is, like, let's kill him for good, but anyways. Okay. I have a different thought on this. Probably I've put too much thought into this. So... Okay, let's think about this. So, I'm thinking I would marry Jason just because I feel like he's got the skills to provide a little bit better. At least, look, he's outdoors. So you know, camping's not an issue.
He can't talk though, so.
No, well, that's good. I mean, that's how most marriages are. And look, even in one movie, he's got like a tool belt, so we know he's a bit handy. So, like, you know, he could chop some wood for me, he can do all that, and he can protect you as well. I mean, technically all of them could, but I think, you know, he's probably the biggest out of the bunch. Like I said, he's more of a survivalist in any case. Now, for the other two, I would probably kill Freddy. Just because I can't imagine having sex with him, because what if he wants to give me an oil check? Like, you know, put his finger up my bum. I don't want those razors going up my ass. So, for that very reason, I am not having sex with this guy.
You also might be past this age range too.
I don't want his finger knives anywhere near my dick. So, I'm killing Freddy. And that kind of just leaves Michael Myers to be the silent lover, as you said.
Yeah, I guess one good thing about Michael though is I guess you could argue that maybe he felt a little bit of attraction to his sister in the first movie, since he was topless when he killed her, but he doesn't seem to have much of a sex drive, so he'll probably just do what he needs to do and just be done with it, as opposed to like having a good time with it like Freddy would.
Yeah, and plus, look, if you have sex, it's not like he's going to go out and tell a bunch of his mates or anything, so...
You can protect your masculinity.
Yeah, he doesn't talk. I think that works out well. Anyways, look, hey, maybe I'll put this up as a separate thing on YouTube. People can discuss what they thought, and I don't know, maybe they've got their own opinions on this.
Hey, we have to show the people what we believe.
Yeah. We're giving them the topics that everyone wants to discuss. These are the things everyone needs to be thinking of. It's very important.
You'd be fucked, don't you? Oh yeah, make me come. Yeah, I'm gonna fucking jerk you off and fuck you in the ass. Oh yeah. I wanna make you come too.